Hey guys, Alan here, Solid Rock Bible Class. Hey, glad you're with me. We've been talking down the line of character traits of Jesus, and I'm going to deviate just a hair from that today, and I'm going to talk about God's plan. Because if we're following these character traits of Jesus, we're going to be right within God's plan. Ecclesiastics, the second chapter, verse 11, I want to read real quick. It says, "Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, and on the labors that I had labored to do. And behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun." You know, in my daily life and my work life, I deal with a lot of in life situations. I'm extremely privileged to work with excellent nurses and doctors and hospitals and hospices. Most of the patients I deal with they're sick and dying. There are exceptions to that, but for the most part, that's what I deal with. Most are older, and sometimes I have to deal with younger ones, and those are the ones that probably break my heart more than anything. These people, they come from all different walks of life. They come from all different ethnic groups. They come from all different social classes. They have all different monetary standings. When people, though, when they come to the end of life, they're not concerned with money. They have more concerns about relationships. They want to make sure that they feel like they're loved. They want to be assured that they've left this positive impact on people so they'll remember them. They want people to know they loved them. They think about the relationship with God. King Solomon, who was David's son, he was granted anything he wanted, anything he desired from God. And what did he ask for? He asked for wisdom. This goes back into the book of 1 Kings, the third chapter. And God says, since you did this, I'm going to give you not only the wisdom, but I'm going to give you the riches too. In Ecclesiastes, Solomon writes his thoughts about trying to find the meaning, though, of life, and trying to find it through pleasure and wealth and projects and adventures and fame. And he has kind of a final analysis here. He says everything's meaningless. That is, everything the world has to offer, it's just meaningless. Those of us that are Christians who've given our hearts to Christ and have the Spirit of Christ working in our lives, we know this to be true. Most of us have discovered that only God can fill this void in a person's soul. The world can just never fill that. However, if we're honest with ourselves here, we still try to live by the world system, don't we? We still take and esteem those who have wealth and power and fame. We still long for pleasures and adventures and conquests. I remember early in my life, I guess you could say this was Alan's plan. I wanted to go to college and graduate from college. In fact, I was the first one to go to college and graduate from college. That was in my family, my immediate family. I wanted to get a pilot's license. I had a love of flying, and I did that. I wanted to get a good job. I wanted to get married and have kids and have a nice house. Then I wanted to get a better job, and then I wanted to own my own business, but I wanted to make sure my kids were put through college. I wanted to make sure that I had at least enough money that people didn't have to worry about me when I retired. I wanted to retire early. That didn't happen, did it? And I kind of wanted to live this life of leisure and pleasure and contentment. I don't think it really sounds evil. I don't think it really sounds even irresponsible, but over time I learned that even though this was everybody's dream, it wasn't necessarily what God had planned for us. You know, many people have been able to achieve a life like this and still feel like something's missing in their life. King Solomon had all of this and even had more than this. And he says, all was vanity and vexation of the spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. These are things that can never really satisfy what we really are looking for. As I've thought about this, I ended up finding this little 5-point outline. And I just want to catch it briefly. It won't take me very long here. The first one, all these start with S's, by the way. The first one is surrender. I want to live my life surrendering for Christ. I want to die to my own self-interests and to my own dreams. The Bible says, Paul says, he must increase, I must decrease. That's what all of us need. My life, it's not my own. Because the Bible says we're bought with a price. So the first S here is surrender. The second S here is seek. I want to seek him daily with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, with all my strength. I want to take and seek him in his word, in the Bible, in prayer, in worship. I need to take and make sure that he's my compass. He's my guiding star, I guess you could say. In Acts the 17th chapter, I'm going to read a few verses here. 17th chapter, verse 24. It says, God that made the world and all the things therein, seeing that he is Lord of heaven and earth, dwelleth not in temples made with hands, neither is worshipped with men's hands, as though he needed anything, seeing he giveth to all life and breath and all things, and hath made of one blood all nations of men, for to dwell on all the face of the earth, and hath determined the things before appointed in the bounds of their habitation. Verse 27, that they should seek the Lord. They should seek the Lord, he says, if happily they might feel after him and find him, though he be not far from every one of us. We need to seek God because he's right there. The third S here is sacrifice. In Romans the 12th chapter, verse 1, he says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And he goes on in verse 2, and he says, and be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, that ye may prove that which is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. See, it's not about accumulating wealth. It's not about accumulating possessions. We need to take and give it all to him. The next S here is suffering. I don't want to be afraid to suffer for Christ. In Romans the 8th chapter, verse 17, it says, and if children, then heirs of God, and joint heirs with Christ, if so be that we suffer with him, that we may be also glorified together. So, many times God has to take and prune our lives just a little bit and get us where we need to be. Because we know that God's never going to leave us. He's never going to forsake us. We need to seek him. And, there's times that we will suffer with him. There's times that when we stand on the principles God puts out there for us, there's times that people are going to shove us aside. They're not going to want anything to do with us. They're going to look down at us sometimes because we stand for a principle that they don't stand for. The last S here that I want to catch is service. I want to love God. I want to love others. I want to give my life away, I guess you could say, as I consider others better than myself. I want to be faithful. I want to be a servant leader, I guess you could say. I can tell you that I know this kind of life, it's possible because I've seen it in other people. So as you plan your life and as you plan the end of your life, there's nothing wrong with doing estate plannings and making sure you have good retirements. I know I've had people make fun of those type of things, but there's nothing wrong with that. But I do think there's something more important. There's the thing that's more important than that is to make sure that we fund our Christian life. You make sure that God rules within each and every one of our lives. He lives within our life. So let's live by God's plan, not the plan that we've set for ourselves some time ago, but by God's plan. This is Alan. I will catch you a little bit later.